People think the mafia is dead, that it faded away with John Gotti, with the RICO trials, with the FBI wiretaps that sent bosses to die in prison. But here's the truth. The mafia still matters in 2025. Not in the way Hollywood showed you, not with gunfights in the street and dons in limousines. It matters because it never stopped pulling threads that touch business, politics, and even the way we think about power. By the end of this video, you'll see how the mafia never vanished. It adapted, and it still shapes the world we live in today. The mafia. Few names hold as much weight. Even now, decades after the so-called golden age of organized crime, people know the word instantly. For many, it conjures the faces of Brando, Pacino, or Gandolfini, fictional characters who became larger than life. But the real mafia, La Cosa Nostra, was never just about movies or myths. It was about control, about influence, about the ability to bend society quietly without anyone realizing it until it was too late. And in 2025, that's why it still matters. But before we dive in, a quick note. If you're fascinated by the hidden history of organized crime and how it still touches the world today, make sure you subscribe. The mafia thrived on silence and secrecy. Here we open the door they tried to keep closed. The story begins not in 2025, but more than a century earlier, in the crowded tenements of New York and Chicago. Italian and Sicilian immigrants, many poor, many despised, arrived in a country that gave them few chances. Prejudice, exploitation, and indifference from police and politicians left them to fend for themselves. Out of that struggle, networks of protection formed, families, societies, clans. Some were cultural, others were criminal. But in America's unforgiving streets, the two often overlapped. By the 1930s, under men like Lucky Luciano, the mafia transformed from a loose collection of street gangs into a national syndicate. Luciano's creation of the commission was not just a power move, it was governance. Disputes settled in quiet rooms rather than all-out wars, money flowing upward, discipline imposed downward. The mafia became a shadow government, a parallel authority to the one in Washington. For decades its power was undeniable. Gambling in Havana, heroin through New York, casinos in Las Vegas, unions at the docks. The mafia wasn't hiding, it was embedded. But then came RICO, the racketeering laws of 1970. And with them, the trials that toppled entire families. Bosses who once walked free found themselves in chains. Informants, men who swore blood oaths of silence, began to break. Sammy Gravano in New York, Phil Leonetti in Philadelphia, Joe Valacchi before Congress. Each betrayal peeled away the mafia's aura of invincibility. The public declared the mafia finished. John Gotti, once the dapper Don, died in prison. Nicky Scarfo, the paranoid butcher of Philadelphia, rotted behind bars. The Chicago outfit lost its grip after the family secrets trial. By the 2000s, newspapers ran headlines, "The mafia is dead." But the obituary was premature. The mafia didn't die. It adapted. It shed its skin, returning to invisibility. No more flamboyant dons in limousines. No more public shootouts on Mulberry Street. Today's mobsters learned that visibility is death. They live in modest houses. They drive unremarkable cars. They invest in quiet businesses, and they keep their names out of the papers. Yet the influence remains. Construction contracts in New York still to this day have been exposed as mob-touched. Waste management routes quietly monopolized. Illegal gambling websites run offshore but managed by old-school discipline. Healthcare fraud, insurance scams, even cybercrime. These are the mafia's 21st century rackets. And internationally, the mafia's Italian cousins, the Ndrangheta and the Camorra, rose to dominate the global cocaine trade. Their billions dwarf the American Mafia's resources, but the ties remain. Shared smuggling routes, joint laundering schemes, money moved quietly across the Atlantic. This is why the mafia still matters in 2025. It isn't about Tommy guns or pinstripe suits. It's about survival. It's about the ability to adapt, to shrink, to hide, to endure. Consider healthcare fraud. In 2019, federal prosecutors indicted Genovese associates in New York for running a scheme through bogus clinics. Patients billed for tests they never received. Paper trails engineered to look legitimate. Millions siphoned, laundered through shell companies, and quietly funneled back to mob-controlled networks. It lacked the drama of casino skimming or Atlantic City street wars, but it was safer, more lucrative, and harder to trace. In New Jersey, another case revealed mob influence in pharmaceutical distribution. Opioids diverted, fake prescriptions forged. The profits funneled through pharmacies that appeared legitimate on the outside, but on the inside were tied to La Cosa Nostra's networks. Here's the lesson. The rackets changed, but the mindset didn't. Find a system, exploit its cracks, and skim profit in silence. And then, cybercrime. The mafia doesn't breed hackers in hoodies, but it doesn't have to. In Brooklyn, investigators uncovered joint operations between Eastern European fraud syndicates and Italian-American mobsters. The hackers stole identities, cloned credit cards, and ran phishing scams. The mafia provided what it always had: laundering pipelines and muscle. If a coder got out of line, if a cut wasn't paid, there was still a knock on the door at midnight. And of course gambling. Always gambling. It was the mafia's first love, and in 2025 it still is. In New Jersey, federal cases revealed Bonanno associates running illegal sports betting rings out of social clubs, in the very same neighborhoods their fathers once controlled. What's new isn't the game but the platform. Now it's online servers offshore, cryptocurrency wallets, and digital point shaving. The mafia doesn't have to own the casino floor anymore. It just needs to be close enough to skim. Internationally, the ties are even stronger. The Calabrian Ndrangheta, once dismissed as a provincial gang, now controls the bulk of Europe's cocaine trade. By the 2010s, it was described by Europol as the most powerful criminal syndicate in the world. Its billions flow into real estate in Toronto, New York, Miami, and who better to manage those investments quietly than their American cousins? La Cosa Nostra, in 2025, may not dominate the docks as it once did, but its networks still give it value in a globalized underworld. But maybe the most underappreciated reason the mafia still matters is cultural. It shaped America's imagination of crime like nothing else. Gangsters came and went, cartels rose and fell, but the mafia became a metaphor. The Godfather taught audiences that power was family, secrecy, betrayal. The Sopranos dragged that myth into suburbia. To this day, the very word mafia is used globally, from Russia to Japan, to describe organized crime syndicates, even when they have nothing to do with Italy. And that cultural legacy has real power. A gang member on a corner might have muscle, but a man who can claim, even faintly, ties to the Gambinos or Genovese still commands a kind of fear. The mafia's name is its weapon, its history is a currency. Reputation, once earned in blood, continues to pay dividends long after the bullets stopped flying. Of course, there are two perspectives on the mafia in 2025. One says it's irrelevant, compared to Mexican cartels shipping tons of fentanyl, or Chinese triads moving billions in fraud, or Russian hackers stealing entire identities by the millions. What's a handful of aging wise guys in New Jersey? They're outnumbered, outgunned, and outdated. From this view, the mafia is nostalgia, the ghosts of men who mattered once but not now. But the other perspective says the mafia's survival is its importance. It has lived through a century of pressure, prohibition, the Kefauver hearings, the Valaki testimony, RICO, the fall of Gotti, the wars of Scarfo, the family secrets trial. Every time law enforcement declared it dead, it resurfaced in smaller, quieter forms. That longevity is unmatched. Cartels burn bright and die violently. Gangs fragment. But the mafia knows how to wait. And here lies the deeper truth. The mafia matters not just for what it does, but for what it reveals. It is a mirror held up to American society. When it fixed construction bids, it exposed how easily corruption slips into business. When it infiltrated unions, it showed how worker protections could be hijacked. When it laundered money through Wall Street, it blurred the line between legitimate capitalism and organized crime. The mafia matters because it shows us the cracks in our system, cracks that in 2025 still exist. So when someone says the mafia is dead, ask yourself, what would dead mean? If it means no more public gunfights, no more flamboyant dons posing for cameras, that's true enough. But if it means no more influence, no more quiet fraud, no more skims hidden in legitimate businesses, the evidence says otherwise. The mafia matters because it survives, because it hides in plain sight, because its shadow stretches further than its size. Invisibility is its new strength. So yes, in 2025 the mafia still matters, not in the headlines, not in the movies, but in shadows, in contracts signed under the table, in fraud schemes buried in digital code, in whispers that still make men pause before crossing the wrong person. If you've stayed with me through this deep dive, you're the kind of viewer who sees past the headlines. Subscribe, because the mafia thrived on silence, and here we break it. Watching until the end helps these stories reach more people, and ensures the mafia's history, past and present, will not be forgotten.